Hello, ladies and gents. I am Mr. SNS, and welcome to today's video. This one is a little bit different because, in honor of the spooky season, I wanted to bring back a trend that I used to like seeing a lot on YouTube, which was that of childhood trauma. We all have had experiences as kids where we would experience something that just resonated with us. Oftentimes this was stuff that we saw on TV or in video games. The world to a child is just so much different, so much scarier. I vividly recall all those sleepless nights where I was in bed. It's like 2 a.m. and I have to go to the bathroom and I just can't bring myself to get up because I'm terrified to go into the hallway and I know that there'll just be some demon monster there, you know? So I wanted to explore a little bit about what experiences that I had that may have, given me some of those sleepless nights. So without further ado, I'm gonna go just through a list of some of the things that traumatized me as a child. I'll be starting out here with something that was really not appropriate for a child as young as I was to have seen, but it was the Hellraiser movies, specifically Pinhead from them, because that's the only thing that I ever really knew was in them. The Hellraiser franchise is a series that I still have not seen any of the movies from, and it is, as far as I know, about these creatures called Cenobites who are trying to bring people into their world and scheme of reality where pleasure and pain are the same thing. Naturally, I did not know any of this as a kid. All I knew was that my mom was scared of those movies and that Pinhead was really creepy to me. Pinhead was my very first exposure to body horror. This guy that's got these cuts on his stomach and these symmetrical slices all over his head with these pins that are deeply embedded into his face. It was just really terrifying for, I think I was a 5-year-old to witness. My mom told me a little bit about him, but really hardly anything. All I knew was that he hurt people and caused other people to become like him in some ways, to become these monsters of sorts. And the quote that I still vividly remember, absolutely terrifying me as a child, was when my mother said, "Pinhead and his gang are not nice." For some reason, that exact line just was enough to make my imagination wander as a child and just be shocked in utter terror. The other thing that really cemented this fear was one Halloween, my family and I, we went to that rich neighborhood where all the nice stuff was. And this one house had its own little haunted house setup that would go through its side yard, through its backyard. I think there was a bridge over its pool or something like that. And then out the exit where you would then be given candy. And outside in the front, they would always have these actors that would stand out in costume and just terrify anybody that walked by. One of these people, naturally, was Pinhead. And I remember looking at my mom's expression as she went into a slight shock of sorts. At least that's how I recall it. And it seems that the actor noticed, because next thing I know, my mom is walking away from this, and my dad, I think, is trying to take a picture. And Pinhead sneaks up right behind her. And I was just there standing on the sidewalk in tears, watching as this thing of my mother's nightmares is now hunting her down, and I knew that he was going to come for me next. Thankfully, he didn't, but that definitely made for a lot of nightmares and a lot of irrational fear. I was terrified of Pinhead for the next couple of years until something else took over as my greatest fear of all time. And I'll get to that at the end. But first, we're going to move on with actually the theme of body horror here. Body horror is something that is surprisingly in a lot of cartoons that I grew up with. And I wanted to just talk about some of the ones that really disturbed me. Naturally, Courage the Cowardly Dog show is full of all kinds of different horror, including body horror. And there are exactly 2 episodes that I remember terrifying me more than the rest. Although there were many episodes that frightened me. And I'm surprised no one talks about these ones. They talk about Freaky Fred, they talk about Return the Slab, they talk about the Harvest Moon Demon Ghost Guy, whatever the heck that was. And those episodes were all scary for sure. But the episodes that really stood out to me were The Revenge of the Chicken from Outer Space and Windmill Vandals. The first one is a sequel or follow-up of sorts to the pilot episode, which I've never actually seen, but I know that they reference it throughout the show where this space chicken ended up being cooked and served and eaten by the family. But in this sequel, he comes back as the cooked chicken with no head. Seeing the headless chicken on its own was not super frightening to me as a kid, but what was the fact that he wanted to take Courage's head, to rip it off and put it on itself. The idea of something trying to steal my head, to take my parts and assemble itself with them, is disturbing. The idea of a decapitation alone is disturbing. It fails to catch Courage, but it manages to capture Muriel, who it tries once again to steal her head. Courage naturally saves Muriel, but he's unable to save Eustace. It steals his head and puts it on its body, and it's kind of funny, which almost makes up for the terrifying concept. But then this happens.
Oh, there's Eustace with my slipper.
That ending was terrifying to me. The fact that Eustace's body is just walking around with no head. And as a kid, I was like, how can it see? How can it hear? What's it doing? Like, why is it alive? Like, that's 2 instances of body horror in the same episode, both regarding decapitation. I was going, what the heck? And yeah, that just hurt me. The next episode I want to talk about, Windmill Vandals, was also centered on decapitation. The idea is that there is this windmill that the family has, and if it ever stops turning, the Windmill Vandals, these 4 horsemen of sorts, will arrive and come and kill the family. The windmill eventually stops turning in the episode, and these horsemen show up, and Courage is continually trying to keep the windmill turning, and they'll always disappear when he keeps it turning. But eventually it stops, they show up, and chop. Courage's head comes off, Muriel's head comes off, Eustace's head comes off. They're all just decapitated. Thankfully, because it's a cartoon, they're all still alive, but then they end up switching bodies. And that was extra disturbing to me, the fact that the head is on the wrong body. They're trying to build and fix this windmill and get it turning again, and thankfully they managed to do so. I mean, in the end, their necks are still cut, they're all still headless, but at least they're still alive and the bad guys are gone, right? I don't know, this was just something that really hurt me for some reason, and I still think about this episode. It's one that still makes me very uncomfortable to this day. Another example of body horror that really affected me, and actually still affects me today, is more of a concept, but I want to explore it in 2 specific cartoon episodes that really bothered me. This concept is about 2 living organisms merging into one. That is just so awful for me to watch or even describe. I don't know why, but this specific concept is something that to this day makes me extremely uncomfortable. The trailers for that horror movie Together, I haven't seen it, but the trailers alone just made me go, what? No. Why? What is this? Why are their eyelids kissing? Like, what the? No. There's something about the idea of being forcefully something that you were not before, and no longer just you. You are with someone else in it. You are together. It's scary to me. Now, it's not that the product itself scares me. Conjoined twins don't bother me. None of that bothers me. But the idea of just being merged forcefully like that. And what better to embody this concept than Squid Bob Tentacle Pants, the scariest episode of SpongeBob SquarePants by far. You cannot compete with it. You cannot debate me. I will have you banned from the comments if you say otherwise. This episode is just awful. The episode involves Sandy, who has this machine that accidentally fuses the bodies of SpongeBob and Squidward. And you get to just see all the goofy things that come with them being this 2-headed thing and trying to get unstuck. At the very end of the episode, they are still stuck together, and Squidward has a clarinet recital. The audience is not happy with his clarinet playing, but they are very enthusiastic about this freak of nature that he has become. Sandy unfuses them, and it's a happy ending. But then the writers decided that they hate children and want us all to suffer mentally. So instead, Squidward wants the fame. He decides to try to fuse himself with SpongeBob again, and it goes wrong. He ends up fusing himself with basically all of the main characters in the cast, and then you get this monstrosity. What the heck is this? Why are they alive? Why are they all in pain? I mean, like, of course they're in pain, but the fact that they look so miserable is awful. Now, this scene is kind of funny. I love the line that Squidward gives, but this image just haunted my dreams and makes me legit uncomfortable today. The next episode I want to talk about is something no one has ever really talked about online. At least I've never seen it. And it's the episode Canderemi? I think Canderemi. Basically, the idea is that Doofenshmirtz has invented this machine, this innator that ends up fusing things together, and it hits Candace and Jeremy, and they become attached at the hip. This one isn't as bad because I don't have the mental idea of their organs intertwined or their brains mixing or anything like that. It's just their skin is attached. And once again, it's a joke. There's a lot of hijinks ensues because of this. And it's a funny episode. And of course it ends with the characters all coming together. They manage to get Candace and Jeremy separated. And Jeremy's completely unaware of it the whole time. He's asleep the entire episode. It's crazy. It's just funny. And the machine that unseparates them ends up breaking. So, it's all good. Nothing to worry about. Until the ending. The ray goes off one more time from the innator that shoots Phineas and Ferb, and they are now one person. And you know what? They're both okay with it for some reason. And that, I guess the fact that they're not suffering doesn't make it as bad, but they're not just two-headed. Their heads are like intertwined. Why do they look like this? Why is this so awful? And the machine is broken. You know, like, I know that they're geniuses, so they'll be able to fix the machine, and naturally in the next episode they're back to normal. But the fact that this is just how the episode ends makes the little kid me that watched this feel that this is how these two end. I hate it so much. It made me so uncomfortable. And it's sad because otherwise I love this show. And even this episode is great. But every time I get to this episode, the temptation always comes to just skip it because that ending just makes me so uncomfortable. I hate it. I hate this whole concept, as you see. What's interesting for me is how I went from being so afraid of a lot of things online and in movies to being interested in them. I went from actively being terrified of them to seeking them out and looking them up. I remember when I discovered the Herobrine creepypasta, 100% believing it's a real thing and looking him up on YouTube all the time, Minecraft Herobrine mod. To be fair, I didn't believe he was a ghost. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I was under the impression that there really was this strange glitch or entity or mod or something that was in the Minecraft game. And just like everyone else my age, I was building that totem. And I was very disappointed, but at the same time somewhat relieved when Herobrine did not spawn in. I vividly remember a time when I was playing with my cousin. We were playing Minecraft Pocket Edition on our iPads, and there was a third Steve that just randomly spawned in, and he just floated in the air, not doing anything, and we thought it was Herobrine. In hindsight, it was probably some kind of graphical glitch. I'm not sure what would have caused it, but the dumb 10-year-olds that we were believed full-heartedly that this was the guy. This was Herobrine here to kill us and destroy our games. So we covered him up with dirt in a little tower, and the next time we logged on, that dirt tower was gone, confirming our suspicions, although we were completely wrong. Creepypastas are an interesting thing. They're just internet campfire stories, really. Fake stories that are usually pretty terrible. They are stories that, as kids, we tended to believe in or at least be really scared by just because they were given with such an earnestness. They were read by really good voices and really fun YouTubers who enjoyed what they did. I remember one of my first exposures to a creepypasta where I knew it was a creation of the internet was, of course, the Slender Man. Slender Man, at the time, was the most terrifying thing to anybody on the internet. Everyone was playing Slender the 8 Pages. Everyone was making fan films. Marble Hornets was at its peak. We were all scared for our lives from the tall, white, skinny, bald dude with no face. Really, in hindsight, he wasn't really scary at all. And this even extended to other creepypastas as well. Of course, there's Jeff the Killer, who honestly traumatized me as a child. I vividly remember seeing that dumb photo for the first time and not being able to sleep for the next 3 nights. At least not easily without thinking of it. That face, that image is terrifying, and we still don't know where it comes from. I hope in the next little while we can eventually find the origin of it. But I remember just looking at that and going, what the heck is this picture? Same with Smile Dog and others. Although not a lot of them really terrified me. I think the ones that scared me the most were, of course, Jeff the Killer, and it was just because of the picture. In hindsight, the story itself is poorly written and actually really funny when you read it out loud. And also The Rake. Now, The Rake is one that I didn't actually read or listen to a creepypasta of. All I knew was it was this weird alien humanoid looking thing, and I thought it was just creepy as heck, and that was another one that for some reason kept me up all night. Really, I don't have much to say about creepypastas that hasn't already been said, but they were my first real interest in horror, and I thought that they were actually really cool. And part of it, I think, is because of how much they terrified me and how they were a creation of the internet. I remember listening to a lot of those YouTubers that read creepypastas, and they'd have the scary music and occasionally the pictures that would pop up on the screen. And it was honestly genuinely scary. Those 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes longer, were horrifying ones where I was laying on my bed with my earphones in, just listening to a scary story. It's kind of nostalgic, and it's sad to me today that I no longer really have those experiences. Creepypastas don't scare me like they used to. A lot of them are at least better written, but they don't have that same effect. Same with movies. I don't really have these feelings anymore, unfortunately. But I love looking back like I am now and just recalling the effect that creepypastas as well as horror really had on me. One more interesting example of internet horror that really affected me only because I was a young child is Evil Elmo. I'm really surprised I've never heard anyone talk about this video. I have met a few people in person, like close friends, who vaguely remember it existing, but I've never seen anyone online talk about this thing. And maybe there's a good reason for it. It's not scary. It's not even really that good. But Evil Elmo is an old YouTube video that's exactly what it implies. Elmo is evil and apparently kills people with a knife or something. And it's all told in just these movie maker style slides with text on the screen and the theme from Halloween playing in the background. The theme music from the Halloween movies legitimately terrified me as a little 8-year-old. Not because of Halloween, but because of Evil Elmo. And that's really funny to think about. It's actually really funny to think about how much this scared me as a kid. I remember watching it with my cousin, and we just sat through it, shaking, not wanting to talk about it after. It's pretty darn funny in hindsight. And last but certainly not least, because earlier in this video I already implied that this was my greatest fear, Chucky. What is there to say about this little dude that has not already been said by countless people doing these exact same videos? It's actually through the childhood trauma videos that I've seen people post that I learned that I was not the only one that was terrified of this doll. The time that I was afraid of Pinhead started when I was around maybe 5 years old, and it ended when I was 7. That started because my brother was watching The Mummy on a VHS tape that we have. And being produced by Universal Studios, it contained commercials before the movie would start of various Universal Studios produced horror films. So naturally you have Dracula, you have Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and even the original Mummy in these commercials. Hello, Future Seth here. While editing this portion of the video, I actually came across the original commercial that I'm describing, but it's not quite the same as I'm describing it here in the video. I'll show part of it in just a second, but yeah, anyway, you'll see. So back to the video. And just for a few seconds of these commercials, it flashed on screen Chucky. And he wasn't even doing anything in the commercial. It was literally just him in the doll phase, just being a doll. And for some reason, I looked at that as a 7-year-old and I booked it out of the room. Now, this is where it gets ridiculous, because this fear is such an irrational fear that I had from the time I was 7 until I was about 15. I was in high school when I finally was able to conquer this fear. Throughout my time in elementary school, I seemed to be the only one who was afraid of him. Everyone else who actually had seen the movies, I hadn't, thought he was funny and cute or whatever. I don't know. It was weird. They were like, yeah, he's not scary. And I was there like, he's terrifying. He was so terrifying, I couldn't even say his name. His name was a straight up trigger word for trauma. Even today, when I say the name, though I'm not scared, I still feel like I'm saying something I'm not supposed to be saying because of 8 years of training myself never to utter those words. Seeing his face, this demented little face that scared me so much, was enough to scare me off of the internet for weeks, if not months at a time. I remember that as soon as I would see his face in a thumbnail or in a YouTube video or hear his voice, I would suddenly shut off my iPad or computer, whatever I was using to watch YouTube, and I would turn off the device, go into the next room, go do something else for the rest of the day, and never return to what I was originally doing. It was that bad. In fact, I remember at one point, I would see him almost every day in a YouTube thumbnail in my recommended feed. And this happened enough times that it finally got to the point that I got off of YouTube for multiple months. That might be good for me now. But at the time, I would have been about, I think, 10. And I just could not bring myself back to YouTube for a long time because I was so scared that I would open up YouTube and Chucky would be there. Once more, I had not even seen the movie or any of them in that series. I remember when I was 15 years old, my parents rented, I think it was the 7th movie. The Cult of Chucky is what it was called. And I go into the living room where my whole family is watching, and I look on the screen and I see just a flash in the intro sequence. And I go, "Are you watching this?" And they say, "Yes, please join us." And hesitantly, because I was a little fascinated, and also because I felt it might be good for me, I sat down and I watched the entire movie with them. And let me tell you, when he first came on screen, once again, not even doing anything, just being a little doll in the room, I, a high school aged 15-year-old, began screaming my head off. I was shaking and kicking and flailing like a child. It was embarrassing. It affected me that bad. I vividly remember being a teenager and crying and kicking and screaming that this guy was on screen. A few other family members and I believe that I may have actually had some level of PTSD somehow from the initial exposure, because this reaction was so irrational and it took me so long to get over that fear. I can't really say too much about the movies. Once again, people have already said everything that can be said about the series. It's an interesting series about a serial killer possessing a doll and going to kill people in a slasher style. But my reaction to this character is just so insane that I had to put this at the end. I know it may be cliche to have Chucky in one of these videos, but I cannot emphasize enough how scared of him I was up until about 6 years ago. And that's pretty funny to think about. I think after watching the movie, it gave me a little bit more courage. And then over time, I would see clips pop up on TV, or I'd see images of him in my recommended feed on YouTube, or I'd see people talk about him in a childhood trauma video like this one. And I was able to handle it over time until finally it no longer scared me. When I was 19, that same cousin and I, we went and watched the original. It's not a bad movie, actually. I liked the first one a decent amount. And it wasn't scary at all. It wasn't. But just looking back in hindsight, I have to laugh at myself and how scared I was. Growing up is an interesting thing because a lot of the time we outgrow our fears. We outgrow those things that tended to scare us as kids. Sometimes we have phobias. Sometimes we have ideas that make us still uncomfortable. But as adults, it becomes easier to face them. Like I was talking about earlier, it's interesting and even a bit sad that I'm no longer affected by horror like I used to be. Sure, I don't want to be up all night, awake, unable to sleep because I'm so scared, but I like the feeling of that tenseness. I miss the adrenaline that comes from that initial fear and getting through it, almost like you've overcome something much bigger than yourself. Fear is an interesting emotion that we all experience because of how it affects us in so many ways. It feels oftentimes like though there's some negativity to it, we also experience a positivity of getting through something scary and also having the adrenaline to do so. It's a complicated emotion that I miss because of that. Not that I don't feel fear nowadays, I just feel it very differently as an adult. With that being said, this concludes this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please give this video a like and comment down below. Just let me know if you experience the same kind of Chucky trauma that I had. I'm, as far as I can tell, the king of Chucky trauma. Did you see Evil Elmo as a kid? Did you find it scary at all? What did you find scary? That's something I always am fascinated by. Everyone is so very different. Anyway, once again, thank you all so much for watching. I love you. God loves you. Goodbye.